While Arkham Shadow was a great game, it did have many flaws. These are 5 things that Arkham Shadow could have done better. Number 1. Matches Malone sections. While I felt like it was cool to get to see Batman as a prisoner, I feel like matches ruined a lot of the game. Now, I know he was a big part of the story, but around half the game is spent playing as Matches Malone. For taking up that much of the game, there were only a few combat sections as matches. This made the game feel like there were a lot of sections where there were no gameplay. I think Camouflage should have done one of 2 things. One is either add a lot more Matches Malone gameplay sections, or 2 is shorten the amount of time you were matches. As matches, Camouflage could have added a lot more. For example, they could have added Matches Stealth. This would be like Batman's Stealth, but you wouldn't be able to grapple with 2 gargoyles or use gadgets. Camouflage could have added more gameplay variety for matches, or they could have shortened the amount of time as him. I know he does play a huge part in the story, but honestly, more time as Batman would make the game more enjoyable. Number 2. Gadgets. In Arkham Shadow, I felt like the gadgets didn't feel right, and they could have been a lot better. First off, I felt like they could have done the explosive gel a lot better. The creators of the game said that the reason they did it different was because it felt awkward standing up to a wall in VR. I don't see why they couldn't do it like Breacher's foam, where you actually spray it and detonate it yourself. I feel like it would be a lot better and feel a lot more like the flat screen games. I felt like it was way less immersive just shooting it on a wall and blowing it up. Second, I thought the shock gloves felt really useless. I know that Camouflage tried to nerf them because they were overpowered in Origins, but these just felt like they had no use really. Every time you used a special combo takedown, they would go away, and they didn't feel like they did much at all, so they felt pretty useless to me. They weren't very satisfying or fun, like in the other game. Third is that I thought the Batclaw was very nerfed. I didn't really like how it wasn't a physical gadget. I know there wasn't really any slot for it, but I would have preferred it as an actual gadget. Its uses felt limited. I didn't like how you couldn't pull enemies off ledges like in the other Arkham games. Also, pulling down vents didn't feel satisfying at all like it seemed in the games. Pulling things felt a lot better in Skydance's Behemoth. I wish it felt more like that in Arkham Shadow. Also, using the decoder didn't feel like the chronographic sequencer. It felt too easy and you could just kind of tilt your arm and it would go. Didn't feel like you were hacking like the chronographic sequencer. I know they're trying to make these gadgets work for VR, but I'd rather them use the old gadgets and just port them into the game and make them work a different way. Also, because the gadgets work different, they had to change the designs. I like the designs of the other gadgets better. I also feel like it's kind of weird that Batman goes from an Origins using the designs of the gadgets that he uses in the later games, then he goes to these designs in Shadow, then he goes back to them in Asylum. I feel like they could have found ways to make the gadgets look and act like in the other games. Number 3. Bosses. I was very disappointed to find that Arkham Shadow only had 3 bosses. 2 of them were good, 1 of them was okay. The first boss was Falcone. I felt like Falcone's boss fight was just a big combat encounter with a few differences. Those are that you have to explode carts to beat Falcone, and that Falcone has a minigun and grenades. Personally, I don't think these additions are different enough to make it special. It's not a terrible boss fight, but when there's only 3 bosses in the game, I don't want one of the bosses to be like this. The other 2 bosses, which are Shadow Batman and Lockup, are really good. My problem with Shadow Batman though is that there were only 2 stages in the fight, so it felt way too short. Lockup was my favorite boss in the game. He was really fun to fight and his boss was just great. But those are the only 3 bosses in the game. I was really disappointed. I was expecting to see a lot more. If you count the Scarecrow encounters and the Titan sections, there were 11 boss encounters in Arkham Asylum. 11, which is 8 more than Shadow. And worst of all, there was no final boss. Now, not every game needs a final boss, but for this game, I feel like it really did, especially with the lack of bosses throughout the whole story. I was very disappointed in the ending because there was no boss, and the game didn't feel as wrapped up. I also wish there was a Predator boss to have more variety of bosses in the game. I feel like they could have done one with Wesker or Dent. Number 4. The rat theme was not as prevalent. So, all the trailers made it look like that the game would have a focus on the rats, and I really liked the rats. They seemed like a really cool faction. In the actual game, you only fight the rats in 2 parts of the game. That's in the intro and on the second night in Death Row for a little bit. I was very disappointed about this because I felt like the focus of this game should be on the rats and not Tiger Guards, who you fight for most of it. Once you go to Blackgate, the rats are kind of forgot about, and it's more focused on just the Tiger Guards and finding out who the Rat King is. Also, the Day of Wrath is just a Predator section and a combat section between cops and Tiger Guards. No rats are even in the finale. This was very disappointing. The rats were a really cool faction and were severely underused. I wish Camouflage included them in their game more, and it's sad because we'll probably never see this faction again in any other media. Number 5. Batman didn't feel like Batman. What I mean by this is Batman was kind of an idiot in this game. Now, I know that Bruce is early in his career, but still, he's supposed to be the world's greatest detective, and he makes many stupid mistakes in this game that you wouldn't expect Batman to ever do. He should be way sharper than he is in this game, and be way better at what he does. For example, Batman says that he's sure that the Rat King is in Blackgate. Meanwhile, the Rat King was not in Blackgate at all. Also, the world's greatest detective gets caught sneaking out of his cell. How does that happen to Batman, someone who is that smart? And the stupidest thing he does in the whole Arkham series is to decide to whack a vat of acid into Dent's face. How does that even happen? This is Batman, and he just acts out of instinct and doesn't think like how a real criminal would. Batman could have reacted in a different way and solved that problem, but because he did what he did, it ruined Dent forever. Yeah, those are 5 things that Arkham Shadow could have done better. Even though the game was not perfect, overall it was very good. I just think that it could have improved upon some things. Thank you for watching.